You're welcome back, and this is the marketplace. President John Dramani Mahama has announced an imminent cut in the aviation fuel by 20%, which may lead to cheaper airfares. The president inaugurated the newly refurbished arrival hall as well as the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority Training Center at the Kotoka International Airport on Monday. The ultra-modern hall, which is part of ongoing refurbishment of the airport, is expected to considerably ease delays usually encountered by passengers arriving in the country.
Arriving international passengers will see a marked improvement in the facilities at Arrival Hall. The floor area is a lot bigger. As many as 14 new immigration booths have been installed, up from 12 to help reduce the queues. 2 new baggage carousels have also been added so that passengers now have 4 in all to process their luggage. Officials say the work, which was started in 2014, was completed ahead of the October 2016 date. President Mahama also inaugurated the new Ghana Civil Aviation Training Academy building. The edifice houses, among others, lecture theatres, offices, libraries, an air traffic control simulator, computer laboratories, a restaurant, and a 200-seating capacity conference room. There, the president announced that in the coming weeks, the National Petroleum Authority will announce a 20% reduction in the cost of aviation fuel, which is central to the operations of the airlines.
One of the complaints that I have constantly received is the one about Accra being a high point cost for aviation fuel. And so my understanding is that several airlines prefer to load up on their fuel outside Accra. And so we've consulted with the National Petroleum Authority, and the National Petroleum Authority has agreed to adjust the cost of aviation fuel and reduce it by 20%. I'm sure they'll be announcing the details shortly, but their decision is to reduce it by 20%. I'm sure this would improve the volumes that the airlines take, and it will make Ghana a preferred destination for fueling up. And I believe that will increase traffic and will also increase your internally generated funds to be able to achieve some of the magnificent, jobs that you're doing with those funds.
President Mahama also inspected construction works on the ongoing Terminal 3 building. Reporting for Joy News, Maxwell Agbagba.
Meanwhile, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers thinks the directive for MPA to reduce aviation fuel by 20% is quite discriminatory, favoring only a small section of the public. According to the Chamber, the proportion of the population that travels by air is insignificant as compared to road users. It still insists petrol prices in the first window of August must go down further than the 3.5% OMCs have currently done. We have the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers on the line to explore the issue a bit further. Mr. Amwa, you're welcome to the marketplace. And what exactly is your concern here? The president just decided to allow some Ghanaians to enjoy 20% rebate on airfares, or let's say aviation fuel possibly. Why do you have concerns on that?
Let me thank you and a good afternoon to your listeners this afternoon. Clearly, the president was clear in his statement that he has received concerns and complaints that Ghana's aviation fuel happens to be one of the highest in the sub-region. Let me reiterate that concern is not only for ATK or aviation turbine kerosene, for which the 20% has been struck off, and the bourgeoisies and the rich and affluent who can afford flight tickets in and around the country will be able to enjoy that 20% benefit. Today, as we speak, petroleum products, especially diesel and Argo, continue to sell for so much on our local pumps. It is indeed not only ATK that continues to sell higher in the sub-region. Today, the Nigerian prices, according to global petrol prices, prices in Benin, prices in Togo, are way lower than what Ghana is dispensing for its citizens. So clearly, we will be calling on the president to, as a matter of urgency, also look at petrol and diesel and see if we can also benefit similar 20% or even 10 or 15%. I'm quite certain will reduce the cost of petroleum products on the market significantly. If it can be done for ATK or aviation fuel, we believe it could also be done for petrol and diesel, so that the larger population in Ghana could derive those benefits, as opposed to the few rich and affluent who can already afford to buy air tickets being given a further 20% reduction in aviation fuel prices.
Okay, now that's fine. Are you expecting the same margin, 20%, to be translated to what you call the broader population? Let's say, are you expecting petrol and diesel prices to also go down by the same margin?
Indeed, if the president could be magnanimous, could be very kind to do that for the air traffic system, we believe that the road transport system could equally benefit same or something close to 15 or 20%. It won't be bad at all, so that our complaints with the OMCs, with the BDCs every now and then, at least the average Ghanaian going about his duty would now have a lot of confidence in the system that indeed we are price sensitive and will continue to give our people something competitive in the sub-region. Like I indicated, Togo prices continue to be very low. Nigerian fuel prices, with all their challenges, continue to be very low. The Benin, our neighbors, they continue to dispense fuel far cheaper than Ghana is doing. So if aviation turbine kerosene can go down, we believe that petrol and diesel could also be looked at in similar terms. Yeah,
agreed. And let's look at the numbers a bit. You just indicated that the prices of crude at the international market keeps going down. But the point is this. Let's look at the numbers. Export prices have a formula. Let's just suppose a bit the president's call to reduce these fuel by 20%. Is it justified? Because if you don't take care, then probably we are going to go to the pre-liberalized environment where government would have to almost always subsidize petroleum products for Ghanaians to get it cheaper. Is 20% justifiable? Can we justify per the formula available?
Yes, indeed. You will be right in saying if we are not careful, we will be reverting to the former system where prices were controlled by the government. Today is a deregulated market. Yesterday we got a bit surprised that the president was not talking to the finance ministry to ensure that ATK comes down, but rather the NPA. What that means is that the NPA still has a larger control on fuel prices. And what that would also mean is that government may not be subsidizing, but reducing the cost of taxes or the level of taxes on ATK by 20%. If that can be done for ATK, clearly we believe it can also be done for petrol and diesel, so that the larger population, like we indicated earlier, could also benefit some of these interventions. Clearly,
no, Mr. Moore, what I want us to look at specifically is to sort of like subject the 20% to strict proof. That's according to the formula given to us by the NPA and the BDCs combined. They have a pricing formula. Does the aviation fuel come under that formula?
Yes, indeed. Aviation fuel would also be subject to XREF. You add everything, you get to X depot, and then again you get to the X pump, how much these airlines will be lifting fuel for eventually. So clearly, you would have the inbuilt taxes, you would have a couple of margins in there as far as ATK is also concerned. And we believe strongly that what the government has done with ATK now is removing some of the tax components to be able to bring prices down by 20%.
Do we know specifically how much of the tax component the president had to reduce or to come down on to arrive at the 20% reduction?
Yes, clearly, averagely on petroleum products within the country, ATK inclusive, most Ghanaians and most of us are paying about 47%, 47.63% by way of taxes. So 20% going up means government will still be able to retain some 26.6% thereon. And so clearly, if it could be done for ATK, like I have insisted, it is likely it could be done for other petroleum products.
Okay.
It is likely it could be done.
All right. We thank you very much, Mr. Duncan Amoah. He is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers here in Ghana for your time. And then moving on here on the marketplace, two firms are vying to secure a contract for the provision of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to support power generation in the country. This comes as government explores the use of LNG as a cheaper alternative source of eternal energy. Government continues to embrace independent power producers into the country's energy industry to mitigate the impact of the current power crisis, especially on businesses in the country. But how much progress have they made so far? Darryl Kwao come through with this report.
West Africa Gas Limited, jointly owned by Sahara Energy Resources Group and Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, as well as Quantum Power Ghana Gas, a subsidiary of Quantum Power Company, are the two firms that have submitted proposals to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority to lift liquefied natural gas from the port. Some industry players say it is more cost-effective and much cleaner than light crude oil being used to generate power in the country. Project engineer at the GPHA, Komnofori, talks about how feasible such a project will be in Ghana.
That way, LNG is gas, natural gas for energy production and for other domestic use. But it requires a lot of infrastructure. It doesn't just, you can't really put LNG into an existing facility unless you really want to customize the facility to meet an LNG, especially when you consider the components in LNG. You cannot use LNG as a product right from the drilling point. You have to regasify it before you can use it as gas. So quite some amount of infrastructure is required to do that.
Any company hoping to lift liquefied natural gas would require between 18 to 24 months to complete the process. Quantum Power Ghana Gas is currently working to install a floating storage and regasification unit, also known as FSRU, 13 kilometers offshore Tema, and West Africa Gas Limited at the harbour. Mr. Ofori hints of which of these firms is close to securing liquefied natural gas.
For Quantum, I think Quantum would have a chance, but I'm still yet to find out how far their real situation is from the plan situation. Working offshore gives you some more degrees of freedom. You know what to do, you know what the risks are out there, and you want to live with it. If you want to do it on land, as it were in the port, in our case here too, you would have known what the risk levels are and what to do. So if Quantum really wants, because there are mooring points offshore where people are bringing in other crude petroleum products and pumping underwater to the land, and it's been going pretty well. So Quantum still has a chance of doing well if they really want to put up that challenge.
Okay, how about the West Africa Gas Limited?
That, I'm sorry, not very close. Not very close. If they want to do that in Tema Port, nothing has started. I mean, we've not seen designs, we've not seen the details yet. We have a concept. We are open to discuss and go ahead with the concept, but those kind of marine infrastructure work take a lot of dedicated time.
Quantum Power Ghana Gas hopes to deliver liquefied natural gas by the middle of next year. For business owners, they can only hope the clock speeds up to save them from the huge losses they're incurring as a result of the current power crisis.
Darryl Kwao for that report. And on that note, we're taking a short break. Business at Marketplace returns shortly. You're welcome back, and this is the Marketplace. As we move on, you can still send your WhatsApps and others coming in. Our Twitter handle is Joy Business GH, and on Facebook we are at Joy Business. For more, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Now, moving on here on the Marketplace, the Director General of the Securities and Exchanges Commission, Dr. Aduanani Entry, has confirmed the Commission is ready to fight acts of fraud and complex illegal financial transactions. Speaking with Joy Business at the 11th Audit Risk and Governance Conference in Accra, Dr. Anani Entry hinted of massive financial education campaign for investors and the public to bridge the knowledge gap.
The regulator must be on top because if the promoters, those who are bringing the products, they will have some terms, analyzing, researching before they bring out the product. And once they brought the product, you should be able to understand it So you always have to be on top of what you are doing. If you don't understand the product, how can you approve it and regulate it? So the challenge is to constantly develop the capacity of the regulator so that all new products, especially complex ones that are coming, the regulator will be on top of it. We try as much as we can to be on top of the game. And as I said, the product development comes from the operators. But once they bring the products, you must study and understand. So any new products that comes to the market, the regulator must be able to understand. And therefore, we constantly develop our capacity. Sometimes even products that have not been introduced in the country, you start looking at it and training your people, knowing that in future some of these products are going to come to the market. So you have to make sure that you are always on top to be able to understand some of these products. When we see people having done what is wrong, we punish them. Punishment, sometimes people are cautioned, sometimes people's licenses are suspended. We have had some prosecutions before, but prosecutions takes time. In our new law, we are also trying to look at the penalties for wrongdoing, which when you put it in terms of administrative penalty, it works better than maybe prosecuting. So we think that if this new law is finally given assent by the president, and most of the penalties are now in the administrative penalty units, it will strengthen the regulators' hand in making sure that people are punished. But we still punish people. If you look at our newsletter, you'll see a lot of penalties that every quarter the SEC apply on people who have.
But explaining the need for the program, the Director of Training and Operations of Misty Training Institute, Chris Clark, said Ghana and Africa need to be educated to fight fraudulent financial flows.
Audit Risk and Governance Conference, or ARG, has been running for 11 years now, and this is the second time we've come back to Ghana. We came in 2008, and we're delighted to be back. Audit and risk and anti-fraud are three things that are very important to our organisation. We run training throughout the world on different aspects throughout the year, and we really see it as an opportunity for senior auditors, managers, directors to come together and discuss in a safe environment the challenges that they're facing and how we can work with them in order to achieve their goals. We very much look at a work locally, think globally attitude, and we like to bring together an international audience but focus on our hosts, which we're delighted at Ghana this year, to really push the anti-fraud agenda. And we very much like to think that even though this is an event in Africa, and it's the 11th one here, it's very much a global meeting point for everyone to discuss challenges that the US are facing as well as Ghana and the rest of Africa.
Now, away from financial matters, mining giant AngloGold Ashanti is making a case for a new stability agreement with government at its Aduapre mine in Takwa, as the current deal nears expiration by end of year. A stability agreement provides mining firms some reliefs in tax and royalty payment to government to enable them undertake major development projects in the communities they operate in. AngloGold is confident of securing a new deal with government. Emmanuel Bedu is a senior manager for sustainability at AngloGold's Aduapre mine.
We are looking forward to it, and I believe that the government also has, so because it sets the basic parameters where expectations are very well defined, because you wouldn't want to invest in an environment where there is probably high level of uncertainties. So it sets, it gives confidence, to people who want to invest in the economy on our side. But also, I think on the side of government, it gives also the base, at least, it sets out the basic requirements or the basic expectations within the period that you probably expect that the people who have signed on to the agreement will deliver, if nothing at all. So on both the side of the government and also both the side of them, the mining companies. So we're very much looking forward to it, and I can't expect nothing than probably us having an opportunity to renew it.
Also, there are some who are of the view that these agreements, reduce government's revenues that it gets from taxes, and you are going to push for another one.
Good. I think it's all border. It's not the agreement per se, but it's the negotiation which goes into the agreement. Because the agreement, at the end of the day, is a spell out of what you have agreed. So if you have an expectation, of course, then you would want to ensure that you negotiate very well and your agreement captures it. So it is not the agreement itself which is a problem, but it's the negotiation which goes into the final agreement, which I believe is critical. And if there's anything at all, maybe that's what we have to probably, what we want to look at, but it's not the agreement itself.
The Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply is pushing for new laws that will compel government to employ only professional procurement officers. The public sector has in recent years been hit some serious procurement flaws, resulting in some serious financial losses to the state. But President of the Institute, Professor Douglas Burton Chojo Business, going for those who have the experience and the technical know-how can help minimize corruption in the public sector.
Professionalization is a key thing to procurement. You can't walk into a medical fraternity and then expect a prescription from a doctor who is not qualified or even recognized by the state. Procurement, any Tom, Dick and Harry can get up and say, I'm a procurement personnel. That needs to change. And hence I'm pushing also the agenda that it has to be part of the act, whereby if you are a procurement professional, you have to be recognized by the state, like a lawyer, like an accountant. Right now, anybody gets up, I'm a procurement professional. They are not procurement professionals. They are purchasers and they are buyers and they are paper pushers. And they cannot defend something which is wrong, because they are not going to lose their license to practice. And that has to change. It should have been part of the act that if to practice as a procurement professional, you need to have a certain minimum standard qualifications, which the government recognizes. Unfortunately, that is not stated in the Act 63, which has been amended. So it's going to create, in my view, more confusion. And that has to change. We got to address that loophole within the new Act immediately. Otherwise, this vicious cycle is going to continue. I've seen it, and I'm going to raise it as much as I can, that we have to close that loophole. A qualified person needs to be defined in the Act. Who is he? It is not in the new Act.
And this is where we to a close today's edition of the Marketplace. But you can still stay interactive. Our Twitter handle is Joy Business GH, and on Facebook we are located on Joy Business. For more, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. My name is John Kojo Amuaku, and have a very good afternoon.